Yeah, I thought I'd go through and give a little history of Sunflower, little bit on KSA as well. Title is Naval Air Station Hutchinson, the Sunflower Aerodrome and Gliderport. So, from the website, Little Known and Forgotten Fields, Freeman Little Known Forgotten Fields, aerial view of NAS Hutchinson from early 1940s. You can see there's an octagon at the bottom right of the airport and an octagon in the top center. Those were actually asphalt parking areas for airplanes. And you can see the tower building and its branches off to the old fire station and the garage going off to the sides. And then there was a big hangar to the northeast. There was the small hangar, which is just about 70 feet away from where the T hangar is now. And then later they expanded and they added a hangar that I call the double bubble. It was two round tops side by side further on to the southeast.
Which one had the Olympic-sized swimming pool?
The swimming pool was actually in one of these buildings over here.
Oh, it was put over there.
It was an off airport but on base.
Okay.
Let's see if I do this. I think it was either this building or this one. I don't know if you guys that are on Zoom can see where the cursor is now. Another view of NAS Hutchinson.
But those octagons were parking, asphalt.
They were asphalt parking areas. And years later, someone entered into a contract with Bill Seed to break up the asphalt and haul it off to use it as aggregate for making new asphalt. They did it in the wrong order. They broke everything up and then they were blowing out tires on their machinery trying to go in there and get it. And they eventually just said, can we just pay you what we said we were going to pay and just leave that stuff out there? So that's why we have the big tree-filled area between the runway and the ramp and some of the tree areas to the north. A lot of it got done properly and broken up properly and hauled out, but there was some of it that things just didn't work out the way they intended. Final layout of the base, two north-south runways, a northeast-southwest and northwest-southeast, the big ramp area. And you can see they've added the additional hangar here that I refer to as the double bubble hangar.
Can you go back one? So the other picture only had the one north-south runway, not two?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
And the north-south runway ends here, and now it ends down here. There's a cross taxiway that they added 2,000 feet from the south end, and they added 2,000 feet to the south end of it.
That runway there, that's the old, that's not the one we're using now. That's
No.
the one that they race cars on.
This runway is the one we are using now.
Oh, it is. Okay.
That is our runway.
Yeah.
The one in the picture is the runway we used. The one that's not in the picture is the new runway, is the newer of the two runways. Found that patch from Naval Air Station Hutchinson. The primary training that was done here was the Navy I think it was the P2V. It was the single tail version of the B-24 Liberator. So in 1973, after Bell Seed had been out to the Nationals that KSA sponsored at Liberal, Kansas, he came back and he was all excited about soaring and cross-country soaring. He had a Blahnik, and this was in the November 1974 issue of Soaring. The article, Bill Seed was out cruising around trying to find a place to go fly his Blahnik, and looking for a new place to fly his Blahnik. He was trailering his sailplane around and he spotted a couple of guys flying an old Slingsby Swallow on the drone just after the Navy had moved out. That Swallow that those guys were flying is the one that WSA got later and brought back here and flew. That Swallow was owned by three guys from Hutchinson. They called themselves Silent Soarers Incorporated. It was Bob Main, Cheryl Bredfelt, and John McComb. We'll get back to those names in a little bit.
So he bought this place when in 73?
Late 73.
Okay,
he bought it.
Because it was 74. I didn't realize it was that new. I was out here in 74 and flew with I think it was, yeah, it was with him, because he had the tower and the swimming pool, he was living in the tower, had swimming pool, was fine at 180.
Swimming pool wasn't in until 78 or 79.
Oh, was it? No, no, wait a minute.
But yeah, he had a 180. But as Bill said, it was bought as a glider port to hold regional and national championship meets and as a place for local glider pilots to go soaring. Kansas Soaring Association continues to do its best to continue hosting contests here, and we do our best to do as much local soaring and cross-country soaring as we can. So that was 1974. The Swallow, Little Mama as they called it, being assembled right in front of the tower building. Interesting things you can see here is on this edge of the picture, behind the guy under the right wingtip, is a silver Jaguar XKE. Cheryl Bredfeld owned that. You'll also see there's a sail up there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not up there.
We had land yachts. We had three-wheeled land yachts that could be rented for up here. Bill Seed had bought 3 two-seat land yachts and 1 single-seat land yacht. He also had them set up because he knew that motorcycle riders, guys that drive sleds, and everything like that, know that if you want to turn left, you turn the wheel to the left. Use the handlebars of your feet to push the steering thing so that it points to the left. Bill knew that pilots, if you want to make the nose go to the left, you push on the left rudder pedal. He had the cable system set up for the steering such that pilots could drive these things. So if you want to turn right, you push on the right pedal. You want to turn left, you push on the left pedal. When the sports car club was up here, they'd have barrels set up marking paths, and the sports car guys would go out and they would try and drive between a row of barrels. They'd get a PIO going and they'd crash into the barrels. You could always tell if someone was a pilot or not a pilot when they got in one of these sail cars. The pilots could take off and just go on a straight line. The non-pilots swerving back and forth and tip it over.
Same on those in the T hangar, that first clean out.
Yep. Yeah, there were still a couple of them around before the last big clean out of the T-hang. A rusted broken frame. Bill actually got the local land sailing group together and they set up a course and they were going to have races out here one weekend. And that entire weekend, I think the highest wind gust we had was 1.5 to 2 miles per hour. It just went absolutely, completely dead calm Friday evening through Monday midday, and not a breath of air moved. And all the guys are out there like, we can't do anything. We come to the land of the wind and the wind goes away. So we moved to PSA moved to Sunflower. Bill said, you guys have been looking for a home. You've been at Strother, you've operated out of Newton, you've operated out of Rodden Field, you've operated here. I bought this place. I want you to come here. Call this your home. First thing we got to do is put up a hangar to keep the gliders in. So Bill bought a hangar kit. What now have is the T hangar. And if you go over there, the first truss in from the southwest end of the building, or as they called it, Building West. Bob Main, one of the guys from Silent Soars Incorporated, taught us when you've got a building at an angle, what you do is you say, that wall is building west, that wall is building north, that is building east, that is building south. Because half of the people will say that's the northwest wall, and half of the people will say it's the west wall. But if you define everything, and then they'd mark on their levels what was what, because in construction, you realize that a bubble level isn't perfect. If you put it on this way, you get one answer. You put it on this way, you get another answer. So, had to do that. Put up the hangar. If you go to that first truss inside the building, when they poured the concrete to support the truss, they core drilled through the concrete, set the truss in, re-poured concrete to form around it. They put the date in there, and I think it's February something of 1974. When they were putting it up, my dad was involved. He was helping with some of the welding of stuff, welding things together. And he came out from one of the days, having the most god-awful headache he had ever had in his life. He had been up on the roof working, putting sheet metal down, doing a little welding, putting sheet metal down, needed sunglasses. Bill Seed loaned him a pair of sunglasses. End of the day, Dad found out those were prescription sunglasses, and Dad's prescription wasn't anything like Bill's. Needed to provide other activities for the families of people that come up here. The area behind the tower building was kept clean and mowed. Bill eventually put a swimming pool in there. So all of us that were here truing had a nice cool place to go, spend the afternoon, cool off. We could watch the traffic pattern. At that time, we never came out to the runway. Where all the gliders were assembled between the tower building and the T hangar. You'd just push the glider out. If the wind was out of the south, we took off going southeast on the ramp, and we came in and landed over the trees back that way and landed and stopped, pull off to the trailer. There's no need to go to the runway. We've got all we need right here. And we were sharing the facility with Sports Car Club of America. They would typically have 2 race weekends a year up here. That was after they had stopped running at Lake Afton. And they came up here and they spent a lot of time. You could always tell the difference between the SCCA guys and the glider pilots. Something good. The glider pilots like to see our stuff going up. We don't like noise. They like noise. And there was also a skydiving operation over here. Dave Snyder, who a lot of people seem to think might have been DB Cooper. There's some interesting similarities there because Dave showed up in this area not too long after that event. And Dave had a lot of money and he started a skydiving operation. Dave I think he had been a Marine. Is that right, Chuck? Survival instructor in the Marine Corps. There's a lot of things that kind of said maybe he was and maybe he wasn't. But Dave was one of the real characters around here. He had the skydiving operation. He was one of the first guys got into the business of the spray foam insulation for outdoor oil storage tanks and gas storage tanks. The orange foam in the outhouse, Dave Snyder sprayed that. That was put up before the 1979 Nationals. We also later shared the operation with Hutchinson Dragway. Bill Seed set up Hutchinson Dragway on the ramp with the track running southeast towards the taxiway that went off to the end as the overrun. It caused a little bit of mayhem once when someone landed and then followed the barrels that were set out there to keep people out of the racetrack, and then the glider went right into the start tower. But that got repaired and life went on. One of the funnier things with the Hutchinson Dragway was watching the motorcycle gang when they were out here, and the big old guys on their Harleys, and Bill said he didn't dare take his little Honda Rocket out there because he'd leave them all behind on the drag strip. But one of the guys starts out, goes up, he's on a full wheelie, on his his feet are on the ground, he's trying to run with it, and then falls over on him. And they all go running out, and they give him some more beer, and he's okay, and life goes on. They were a kind of wild group. Corvette Club would come up here and do autocross. And like I said, you could tell the Corvette Club from the Glider Club. Corvette motor blows up. Corvette guys go, oh, and glider guys go, yay! Sports Car Club had some interesting times up here. They had the track came from the S curves on the taxiway that's coming northwest towards the ramp from the southeast. They'd have a 90 right onto the ramp and a 90 left. And then down the ramp, a 45 across the ramp, across the runway. Well, that 90 right, 90 left. We were operating up here one day, and we were operating from southeast of where the track crossed onto the ramp, from there going on southeast. And my older brother was coming in the TG3 to land. And there's a couple of, I think, Formula Vs or Formula Fords that come around the right hand and into the left hand. And the guy in front looks up sees the TG3 going over him, just does a hard full left, looking up at the glider, and spins right in front of the guy that's wanting to do a slingshot on him out of the turn. We've had some interesting interactions between sports car club and glider club. I found a front wheel that was off in the weeds that someone had lost when they rolled their car out or crashed their car out there. Front wheel and suspension stuff.
Built tires in the trees, the other side of the
Yeah.
shower house.
Yeah, they use tires bolted together as barriers. They use 55-gallon drums filled with water for barriers to protect the corner workers. So the building of the hangar. John Clark and Richard Kirkland owned this Slingsby Dart. And early on, they had gotten the trusses up and the metal up, but they didn't have all the doors up. So if you look towards this end, you'll find some anchor points in the concrete. We used to take the TG3, our old training glider, put it in there, and we had to chain it down because it was basically just a sunshade and it had wind blowing through the hangar. You'll also notice 1974, what's this thing over here towards the right-hand edge of the right-hand picture? There was a metal building on the ramp over close to the tower building. But as you can see, they're starting takeoff roll from 200 feet beyond the hangar going northwest. If you look at how much runway there is, sometimes the tow plane would make a little right turn to stay on pavement a little longer, building up a little more speed before it would take off.
That's the.
That is, I believe that is Bill Seed's 180 being used to tow plane right then. 1974, we moved up here in February. We started building the hangar, hosted our first soaring contest here. Interesting things to note on this. The gliders that were flown and the people that were flying. 6th place, Joe Burke, Standard Cirrus. Anyone know whose glider that is? That is now Kate. That is Tony's glider.
Brand new then.
Yep. 10th place in the contest, Robert Eli, Fault Line Flyers guy. 16.5 meter Diamant. That Diamant originally came to the U.S. for George Moffett to fly in the 1967 Nationals at Marfa. It got damaged prior to the 69 Nationals at Marfa. The wings got extended to 17.2 meters. And when Bob Eli flew it here, it was a 17.2, not a 16.5. And it is now mine and in my trailer parking area, southeast of the hangars. So from 1974 to 2026, 2 of the gliders that were here in 74 are here in 2026.
And if I remember right, didn't we have like 60-some gliders lined up out here?
That was during the Nationals in 76, 79, and 84.
I think we're on 76.
Yep.
Is that the one where the guy in the bell?
Yep. Up at Alden.
60 lined up.
So in the days now of GPS control of everything, you know where you're supposed to fly and you fly across this thing and all that. There used to be a different level of excitement with contests. We had, I think this is John McComb. He is the chief timer. We've got a couple of cords aligned. They're tied to the building. And if you went off of this corner of the building, that northwest corner of the building, you go straight off from that, that was straight west. So you'd have two cords lined up, anchored to a common point on that line, one near the ground, one farther up, and you'd sit behind them. When the glider crossed through the plane defined by those 2 cords, the chief timer would call mark. The person looks at the official contest watch, writes down the finish time, hours, minutes, seconds. We go back to when they went through the start gate, hours, minutes, seconds, get the elapsed time, calculate the speed, and then they'd write it up on a chalkboard so that people would know how fast they had gone around the task. You can see that metal building on the ramp in the background there.
Oh, yeah, it's there.
This is our illustrious Bill Seed in the white t-shirt, dark hair with his back to the camera, about the middle of the frame. This is on the ramp looking northeast, basically straight out the east door of the clubhouse here. The ramp was pristine when we came up here. There were some places where there was grass growing up through it, but other than that, everything was clear. That particular plane is Ken Jacobs from Texas Soaring Association. Neat story, a friend of his, Ted Chandler, that I also knew, saw Ken at a contest and said, "Hey, Yellow Fox!" His contest number is YF. Ken said, "It's not yellow, it's Yankee." And Ted said, "I never could say Yankee without saying damn first." They were both a couple of good old Texans. And then the shot turned a little farther. Look at how the tower building used to look.
Yeah, and there's the building still.
1974. And the glass windows were all in there. Bill had put an air conditioner, later put an air conditioner up there to try and keep it cool. There was absolutely no way to keep that place cool. The only person that could afford to keep that tower building cool was the US government. But Bill's 180 is, I think, is the one, the airplane parked there in front of the tower.
That's what I was out here for, right? Yeah. It was 74.
1974. You can
Yeah.
see that metal building.
Yeah.
And
That's what it was.
this trailer here, that the back end is torn up and there's a piece missing out of the side of it.
Yeah.
Earlier in the summer, our KSA tow plane had been parked out here about where, probably somewhere between where the car and the truck, just above the hangar, the little metal building are parked. And a very, very large dust devil was coming across the airport. Kurt McNay ran over, jumped in the tow plane. Fortunately, it was pointed more or less into the wind. He went and shoved the control wheel full forward, held on for dear life as the airplane bucked around in the wind. It picked up that trailer. The trailer was only chained down by the tongue chain. The trailer was picked up, spun around on its tongue chain, slapped the ground. That piece of plywood, that hole that's to the right, was a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and it climbed up to about 500 or 600 feet in that dust devil before it fell out and came back to ground. Cliff Davis was flying, one of our WSA members and one of the early board members of WSA, was flying his K6 that later they gave to WSA. He spotted the dust devil coming across the field. Dive breaks out, goes down to about 600 feet, gets up ahead of steam, comes in, goes to about 600 feet, pulls up, gets in the dust devil, climbs out and gets his gold altitude.
Oh my. So that pad was there then.
Yeah,
I'll be darned. So whatever was on it was taken down before then. Okay.
yes. And I know it's not there now, but I would have sworn that the old single hangar was there on the other side of the tower building, the other side of the T hangar, the first time I was up here.
There was a big military hangar when I came out here in 74. I don't remember where it was, but it was, I thought there was still one.
Next to the entrance to the right.
That was up.
Well, to the right was a different one, but
What
Yeah.
about the other set of T hangars? Did KSA build that, the one that the tornado got?
there wasn't a set that the tornado got.
That's what amazes me is how long that T hangar has been there.
Now, this T hangar has had its roof twisted and doors dropped in.
Yeah, I know, because
And that's why the cables got put on.
Yeah,
And the post got added because if a cable is not hooked up or if a cable breaks,
Yeah.
they added posts at 2/3 of a door length
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
So that you'll always get two posts hitting a door to try and keep it up.
yeah, and it won't blow in, it'll go out, yeah.
Sometimes in thunderstorms, they usually blow in because it's the wind lifting the top is pushing on it, so it's going to take the door in. Now, we did have a glider that was built by the Silent Soarers Incorporated. It was parked right in front of the T hangar. They had pulled it out, they had turned it 90 degrees, they had their hangar spot, and they're pushing the doors, and we're pushing a door, and then all of a sudden, it just starts to lean out away from the building and falls to the ground with a big go oof, and a big cloud of dust and air moving. But it didn't hit the glider. But that gives you an idea as to how clear everything was.
Yeah.
on the ramp and all around.
Shape it was in.
Well, Mother Nature's been working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 50 years
On top of that, yeah.
to take this out.
Yeah.
We no longer have government funding to keep the weeds down, keep the trees out, and we don't really want that either. So 1974, other than the first contest, KSA's got a place to call home. And my favorite accomplishment of 1974 was the first diamond distance flight originating from Kansas. My dad made the flight in the Nebula, which is a 15-meter span wing on a Cherokee fuselage. It's about like a K6. And he did it on July 20th, 1974, 5 years after Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. His task was from Sunflower to Lincoln, Kansas to Cherokee, Oklahoma and back. And he accomplished it in just about 6 hours of flying time. He got back. We were using Citizens Band radios, not VHF radios, because those were expensive, drew a lot of power. CB radios worked great. You would not believe how much range you have with a CB radio when you're at 6,000 feet above ground. You can talk to the truckers in Colorado. No shoot and skip, no nothing, just you hear everything. They had to find a channel that wasn't being used. Anyway, he gets back, calls Bernie Moore was on the ground, and he tells Bernie he's completed his flight and he's going to stay up a little while. And Bernie said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And he said, "Why?" He said, "Is the barograph still ticking? Because if the barograph stops for some reason and your trace goes vertical from where you were down to the ground because the drum's not rotating anymore, you may not get credit for your flight." Full dive brakes, dive, get back on the ground, land. Oh, thank God it's still going. 1975, had another Region 10 contest. First diamond badge completed with all 3 legs originating in the state of Kansas. My dad got his diamond altitude in the Nebula. One of the days where you'll very occasionally have a day where you've got a nice sky full of cumulus, but every now and then one cumulus just goes, and 10 minutes later it's gone. He called those chimney Q because it's a single chimney of lift going up above where all the rest of the stuff is capped. He went into the first one. He launched out of here and he headed west towards Pratt. I think he said cloud base was around 12,000. The freezing level was somewhere around 15 to 16,000. He had turn and bank and attitude gyro in the glider, instrument rated, instrument current. Goes up in the first cloud, and you're asking about what the lift is like in the clouds. He said it was smooth as glass, and it went from about 6 knots to about 8 knots when he went into the cloud. Going through about 14, first cloud lift peters out and he rolls out. Well, that's probably it. I don't see any others. And then he sees one starting to go up about 3 miles away. Turns and heads over, goes into it. 8 to 10 knots, steady all the way around, turning at about 15,000, 16,000. Airspeed goes to 0 because the pitot iced over. The Nebula is a sailplane. You know airspeed just by the sound difference. He's got artificial horizon, he's got turn and bank, and he's got sound audio for airspeed. He goes up, and coming up on about 20,000, he knew he needed to get to a little over 20,000 to get his diamond altitude. And coming up on 20,000, he decided he wanted to make a little correction in the thermal because it was down to about 6 knots over here and about 8 to 10 over here. So he wants to make a little correction. Tries to move the stick, and water had run back and the ailerons are frozen. Oh no. Okay, well, small cloud, right rudder, uncoordinated, get it to wings level. 5 seconds out the side of the cloud. Nothing else going up, smooth as glass. He was just this side of Pratt, I think. Turns and heads back this way, coming through 15,000. The ice melts off the wings, off the canopy. Controls are working. Everything's good. Sure hope he's got enough. You got to have a 16,404 foot gain. He had 16,500 feet on his paragraph. Much closer than he would have wanted to cut it, but he got his diamond altitude. And someone made a trophy for him, the first all Kansas diamond. I have that one now. So last line, life was not always simple. You know, Chuck mentioned the tornadoes coming across the airport. Well, life wasn't always simple. That's Bill Seed's 134 that he had bought. He had a Blanick and a 134 and a Cessna 180. That is over between the T hangar and the tower building. Apparently, the tail tie down and the right wingtip tie downs held, and the airplane just went up 90 degrees on its back. The trailer you can see out there is Bernie Moore's BGN trailer. It didn't get moved. If you look in the background, you see an airplane on its back. That's KSA's 182. That was the second time it had been on its back from a thunderstorm. The first, I think, was over at Mays. It was over there for an annual. And when you go into a little grass strip and you see those nice little foot diameter concrete things with a tie down ring in them, a lot of times those are only about 3 or 4 inches deep into the dirt, and you might as well tie your airplane down to a 5-gallon water bag. Because when it got flipped over at Mays, apparently the concrete thing came out and went onto the ground right next to it. And we had a regionals this year. This is before the contest. The 180 didn't fare so well.
Oh my God.
The 180 was actually parked off the end of the T hangar, got picked up, went over where the 182 is, upside down, and crashed down on the tower building. Anyone know what kind of vehicle that is? It's 1975 or 76.
Oh,
It's a Chevy Monza. And the other really interesting thing about this picture is just the other side of this little camper that you see at the bottom left.
Yeah.
Bill Seed's Blanick is sitting there, not tied down. One dent on it that we think happened when a folding chair got pulled out of the top of the tower building, hit the ground, bounced over, hit the Blanick, and was laying on the ground next to the glider. After we got the 180 down off the hangar or off the tower building, that's what it looked like. Bill Seed, being the generous guy that he was, sold us the airframe, like I said, 75, 76 maybe. He sold us the airframe for a reasonable price, which was $1,500. And he knew that he was selling it to us for less than parting it out would be worth. And we immediately turned around and sold the engine for $2,200, which is a good price for an 0470 at that time. The fuselage then became the jump trainer over at Sky Sports. They would use that. They'd take the door off of it and they'd use that for practicing, you know, walk out on gear, go out on the strut. And that got used at Sky Sports for many years after that.
But it didn't fly again, it was just used.
No, just used for parts. Oh, the vertical tail, actually,
So
the vertical tail survived, so it went on that one.
Was that a thunderstorm or dust devil?
Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm, we suspect tornado. The reason we suspect tornado is the random scatteredness of the damage. The 180 being picked up and dropped right next to the Blanick that wasn't tied down, that didn't move at all. The 182 being flipped over in the path of where the 180 went overhead, and there were hangar doors down, and the 134 flipped over, but the trailer 30, 40 feet in front of it, not moved. The interesting thing is, you look at where Bernie's trailer is and where the 182 is and where the 134 is, it almost had to have been right in the middle of it. But
it's good.
that's the nature of weather. So had a Region 10 contest. Ray Gray won the standard class. Joe Emmons won the open class. Roy LeCrone is flying the Mescalero. The Mescalero is the predecessor to the Zuni that was designed and built by George Appleby. Let's see here. Going through the list, 5th place in standard class, Bullock, FJ1. Yep, that's mine. It's over here. I don't think there are any others on that list that are here now. But also flying contest, that's the FJ1 during our contest in 1975. It was Bravo uniform. Those that know him, MX, this other one, the other LaBelle that has a little red band on the vertical tail. That's MX, that's Neil Muxworthy. He's come up here and towed for us a couple of times. And at the far left edge of the picture, you can see the front end of a glider. You can see its landing gear and gear doors. That's Matt Ganitsky's Austria. Really? I think it was owned by Carl Koenig and was being flown by Frank Lilly at this contest, I think is how that went. 1976, KSA sponsors its first nationals at Sunflower. The at Sunflower is kind of important. KSA was the sponsor for the 1961 nationals at what is now Eisenhower National Airport and the 1973 nationals out of Liberal.
What year was Eisenhower?
1961. The contest operated off of 1432, and they were not to cross the center line of was it 119? They would take off going southeast and turn and parallel the runway. There were several interesting things happened, like a guy pulling the dolly jettison or pulling the tow release instead of the dolly jettison on takeoff. Some of the gliders were still flying on droppable dollies for takeoff, and then landing on the skid. But that's inside the old tower building. I'm not in the picture. I don't think that's Dave in the center, but it might be. We'd have model airplane flying things. We'd go up to the top of the tower and toss our little model gliders off and watch them go out and land on the ramp and then go try and find them before the wind blows them away. Lots of fun times. So we used to park gliders and things out all over the ramp, in addition to back over where the alligator pits are now. But by 76, Bill's 180 got destroyed. He had a Beach Musketeer now that he can go with. And you can see we had quite a number of people come in just to observe and see what was going on contest. Old school racing. You know how we do starts now with GPS, and you've got a cylinder and you fly and you watch the countdown and you go across the edge of a cylinder or across a line and you go on your way. And used to be the start line was 1,000 meters high and supposed to be 1,000 meters wide. We didn't take too close a watch on the lateral boundaries, but we kept a real close eye on the vertical boundary. The way you do it is you have someone sitting here at the corner of the tower looking through these two wires that you can see. That defines a vertical plane that the pilot has to fly through. Then you have a guy out on the runway. This is my older brother Dave and my next door neighbor Greg. This is out about at the cross taxiway. He's got his recliner, his shade, and he's got a bar here and another bar up at the top. So you're sighting along these two bars, and this guy's sighting along two wires looking this way. So they're 90 degrees to one another. And when the guy crosses through the vertical plane, he calls mark on the radio. If the guy under the sunshade sees the glider above his two wires, the guy was too high. You call and say, bad try, too high. If he's below the wires, he's good and you don't say anything. It was a bit of a challenge when the finish gate or start gate height was 1,000 meters or 3,281 above ground. Then they increased it to 5,000 feet above ground. And you're having to identify a glider that's transitioning between sky and cloud and read the contest number on the bottom of a wing, and a contest number that's no more than 2 feet tall on the bottom of a wing of a glider that's moving 150 to 180 miles an hour, depending on how brave the pilot is. You learn to identify them by shapes and colors and other things, because you could have two guys call in at the IP or initial point, and one guy goes fast and one guy goes slow, and you got to split, you got to figure out which one's in front. We got it so easy in racing these days, the GPS controlling everything. I got to do the window at our contest in 2000. And the very first person I got to call as being too high going across the start line was Dick Johnson. For those that don't know, Dick Johnson is an absolute legend in soaring. And he was like, yep, sorry, messed up. Came back around. We had another guy that came in and he crossed my wires probably 20 seconds before the guy on the ground called him crossing. There's a guy out in Colorado. I called him bad try, and I talked to him that night and I said, we've got GPS. We're still using the ground-based gate, but we've got GPS. You were way high. You were way above what could be considered misreading an altimeter or doing anything else. And he said, yeah, I was just checking to see if you were watching. And I said, if you do it again, you are banned from this contest. He was never high, ever, for the rest of the contest. Sometimes all it takes is one good smack on the wrist and they listen to you. 1977. Didn't have any contest here, but 4th of July, the Silent Soarers Incorporated, John McComb, Cheryl Bredfelt, and Bob Main built an HP-18. I believe it's serial 11. It was used as a plug for making a mold for my dad to build his HP-18 from. July 4th, my dad made the first flight on it, then Cheryl Bredfelt flew it. Bob Main flew it later that day. They put 60, 70 hours on it. They're the ones that had the Swallow, and they had always had the goal of getting the Lions to do their silver distance. They never made it. One of the contests in, let's see, the contest the next year, we had regionals the next year. One of the turn points was Lions, and Cheryl got up there and he got a turn point picture of Lions with the HP-18. He was thrilled beyond belief. But the three guys, Bob Main was the founder of a company called Deluxe Manufacturing. They made fuel tanks for all the Collins Industry buses. They made fuel tanks for motorhomes. They made all sorts of custom specialty fuel tanks. And Deluxe Manufacturing was set up right across the road from where Law Enforcement Training Center is now. I think it's an underground boring company that's in there now. But that was Bob Main of this. He was also known as Saint Main. Leah, he had great dad jokes too.
Oh.
Yeah. He's the one that told us about the bathroom over there. He's the one that said, blessed is he who builds outhouses, for he shall provide the relief for all of mankind. Cheryl Bredfelt, the second member of the crew, worked for Hutch Fluid Power, Cessna Fluid Power up in Hutchinson, and later was one of the founding members, movers, and shakers of the Kansas Cosmosphere. I think he might have been involved in getting, was it Liberty Bell 7 up there? He was involved in getting several significant artifacts brought to the Cosmosphere. The third member of the group, John McComb, was banker and racing driver. He drove for, was it Bob Tullius and Group 44 Racing? How many of you have seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari? Okay, Ken Miles. The Shelby Mustang Cobra that was built for Ken Miles, Ken never got to drive because he was killed in a crash of another vehicle. John McComb ended up getting that car. And I think it was the 1967 SCCA group, whatever it was, racing. He won the national championships with it. That's kind of neat. We've got a racing connection here with the sailplane that was built here.
What happened to Dave Snyder's HP that he had?
Okay, we'll get to that one in just a little bit.
Okay.
We're only at 1977. 1978 is when this happens. It's coming.
I was in the right era.
Yep. So after the Silent Soarers Incorporated pretty much stopped flying the plane, it went through two people here. Then it went to someone in Florida. The person in Florida passed away. One of the guys that Tony and I know happened to see something about an estate sale on a glider, and they bought the glider from the estate. And he posted about it on Facebook that he's got this thing, and I said, well, if you're ever interested in getting rid of it, let me know. I now own that HP-18. It's in Trailer Row over here. It's not quite as new and as shiny and new looking as it was then, but it's still in pretty darn good shape, considering it's coming up on 50 years old now. Yeah, 50 years old now. 1978. Had a Region 10 contest here, and we had the first flight of a locally built RS-15. Anybody recognize anyone in that picture? Nope. The person
Was it John Clark that built? Is it the one that John?
The person on the left is John Clark, our John Clark, and his buddy John Carey on the right. They were the builders of that RS-15. In answer to your question, Chuck, Dave Snyder eventually bought into the airplane. According to John, he never paid his share of buying into it and was later bought out of it. John took it with him when he went to Tulsa. He sold it to a guy in Ohio, and its last known residence was Jean, Nevada, with the Las Vegas Soaring Club. Yeah.
Oh,
This plane right here.
HP-18.
No. He had an RS-15. It's very close to an HP-18. The wing is externally the same. The ailerons are hinged on top instead of the bottom, and it doesn't have spar stub carry throughs. It has a carry through bolted to the fuselage. So you put two pins in, one top and bottom, and then one front and back to attach wing to fuselage.
So I just remember it sitting in our drop zone in the hallway.
Yep. Yep. And my dad was once again asked to make the first flight on it. He came back and said, John Carey asked my dad, how does it fly? And he said, it's fantastic. And John Kerry's wife said, I was afraid you were going to say that.
That's it right there?
That's it right there.
Well, no wonder I thought it was an HP-18. It's got a V-tail and everything.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. Let's talk to the tail. Look at that tail. Look like a wasp.
So John Kerry never flew the airplane, but he was involved in building it. The RS-15 was a concept that Streeter was trying out to try and minimize build time. With the fiberglass pod and the aluminum boom tail cone, you slide the tail boom in. You've got a couple of brackets you have to mount in to support the push rods. And you slide the tail boom in. You drill about 8 holes, put the bolts in. The basic fuselage is built.
Wow.
The wings were a machined I-beam spar. You take the inboard and outboard halves out, put them together, install 2 bolts. Your spar is built. Now you just have ribs every 4 inches for 25 feet, front and back, left and right, and then 4 inches forward of the spar, there's another piece of foam that you glue in. 4 inches ahead of that, there's another piece of foam you glue in. So you build 4-inch box cells in the entire wing. And then the wing is skinned with 2 pieces of aluminum. It goes from bottom of the rear spar around the leading edge back to the top of the rear spar. Riveted both places. The skins have a doubler underneath and they're riveted together, but it's 4 skins that cover the wings.
So it's made like a D-box?
The whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. It goes from the rear spar or the main spar around the leading edge, back across the main spar, back to the rear spar. It's all glued
Wow.
and then riveted at the trailing edge.
How long did it take them to build it, you know?
It still ends up taking, well, I've pulled up the FAA file on it, and I think they got the wing kit in 72 and it was finished in 77, so 5 years, 4 to 5 years to build it. Even on a simple airplane, there's still an awful lot of little pieces that have to go together.
When you're 90% done, you only have 90% more to go.
Yeah. Yeah. When you can put the wings on the fuselage, that looks great. I'm over halfway there. Well, no, now you've got all the little systems parts to put together.
That was on the runway too,
Yeah.
and the grass had grown in 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, 77, I was telling her, you could see the difference between 60 and 77 on the weeds and all this.
That's the ramp.
Yeah.
That's 77 on the runway. Yeah. They're starting to grow. So we had a regionals. Second place in the regionals in standard class, Carl Koenig. That's Harry Clayton's standard series. None of the other planes ended up here. Well, Joe Emmons in 15-meter class, Joe Emmons with the LaBelle, that was here briefly. Rich Stone owned that airplane.
Bill C. Standard class was there.
Yeah, Bill C was flying Cirrus.
Decisive victory in the standard class, 999 points, it looks like.
Yep. Yeah, that was the one where I think the last day Carl said, the only way I have a chance at winning is go for broke. And he went for broke and he lawn darted. Carl Koenig was the previous owner of, one of the previous owners of Matt Ganitsky's Austria. He was flying out of the Grain Valley Airport up near Kansas City, trying to do a 200-kilometer triangle speed task, lands out in the field. Farmer comes out and talks to him. Oh yeah, talking to the little girl that had come out with him, telling her all about Soaring and the sailplane. Well, I've got a new one on order. It'll be here later this year. It's a fiberglass sailplane. It's a lot sleeker. It's a lot better performance. Yeah, okay. Next year he sells the Austria, gets the standard Cirrus, flying it trying the same 200-kilometer triangle, lands in the same field. Farmer and the daughter come out, and the daughter looks at him and says, "Didn't you land here last year in the V-tail glider?" He said, "Yeah." "Isn't this one supposed to be a lot higher performance than that one?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And she said, "You must not be very good at this then, all right?" Kids will zing you. So at the 1978 regionals, you can see now we've got the alligator pits have been cut.
No trees.
The alligator pits have been cut.
Yeah.
Well, you aren't going to have trees don't grow out of concrete.
Wait a minute, so you say they cut, so those weren't there before?
Those were not there before.
Why did they cut that?
Bill had those cut because if you look up here in the top right, you can see piles of aggregate.
Yeah.
A company came in and he had them cut out 1 square and then another row of 1 square.
Yeah.
The intent being to come back in, plant trees in the middle, have a shade line, have a windbreak.
Yeah.
Fill it in, grass, nice place for the crews to hang out when the pilots are out on course. It was also, at that time, when the SCCA was here, the pits were also in that area. So he's setting it up so that they'd have pit stalls with shade and windbreak and all that. But the alligator pits have been cut, and that's as far as Bill went. So the rain comes, the dirt starts washing away, the concrete washes away from under the concrete breaks and falls down. Then the cottonwood seeds blow in, and the cottonwoods start growing, and the cottonwoods raise the concrete back up to near level. So in a roundabout way, Bill got his trees. We haven't got grass in there. We've got the trees for the windbreak and the shade. We've got cottonwoods. We've got some cedars. We've got some
Man,
Russian thistle something. That was 1978. That's when those were cut.
See if you get that concrete. Yeah, back then they didn't recycle concrete.
Actually, they were taking this. They were taking this. I think they were using it as what Leon Ziske said was riprap.
Yep.
Pouring along the rip.
Like Sobo, but Cheney, there's a bunch of concrete there. And
Yeah.
They told me that a lot of that came. from-
Oh, okay.
It could very well be, yeah.
There's quite a lot of it out there. Got a big jetty.
Yeah. But before those were in, we had the gliders tied down, trailers nose to nose, a row between so that you could pull your glider out to the runway. And Dick Streeter came in one day with his HP-18 and landed between the rows of trailers. Unbeknownst to him, his right-hand tail wheel steering spring had come off during flight. So his tail wheel was hard left. He's rolling along and he touches the tail wheel down and he turns, snags a wingtip on a tie-down rope, comes back around and broadsides a trailer with his HP-18. It bent the structure on the trailer. They were out there with cars and chains trying to pull the trailer side back out so that the guy could put his glider in. And Streeter goes out and puts some duct tape over the scraped off gel coat on the nose of his HP-18. And that's all that happened to his glider. 1979, we had the first standard class nationals that was held at Sunflower. And it's kind of an odd angle. That's the HP-18 that my dad built. It's not really that bulbous. The projector was pointing a little to the right, and I'm standing off to the right, so it makes the nose look gigantic in proportion to the rest of it. But that's the HP-18 that my dad built, and my younger brother now owns and flies, and that is my younger brother holding a wingtip there for the picture. And in the background is the Dodge Omni of Bob Main. Who knows where that is?
That's town east.
Which is all mobile.
Town West.
Town west, I meant, yeah, east because of the.
Yeah, they were having some aviation related thing and they asked if we could bring a glider in. So I brought the HP-18 in. I had it assembled in front of Montgomery Wards for a busy weekend out there. A lot of flyers handed out. Don't know if we got any members out of it, but it was fun to have Dad's glider in the shopping mall. Kind of take a fast run now through some of the contests and things that we did. 1982 got weathered out that year. The wind blew and the wind blew and the wind blew and the wind blew. I remember Jim Cox was up from Texas, told his crew, go back to the field I landed in yesterday. I think I'm going to be back there. You never like to hear that. 1983, we had regionals. I think it was first week of August. It was the best, most consistent soaring weather we have ever had for any contest. We had 5 days of near perfect soaring. Open class, the winner averaged 80 miles an hour or more on 4 of the 5 days. The one day he didn't average 80, he averaged 78 and a half. The 15-meter class, the winner averaged over 70 miles an hour every day. Will Schumann was flying his clipped wing swept back ASW-12. He went up. We gave him a tow one morning for him to be able to get some flight test performance data. And he gave us his glide polar from the data he'd been collecting. And his glide polar indicated that his clipped wing ASW-12 was getting about 50-to-1 glide ratio. He was also flying at about 1,400 pounds and about 11 and a half or 12-pound wing loading. And the Ventus was at about 9.5. So you can imagine the advantage you get in strong weather when you've got a 20% higher wing loading than anyone else. Will is a very good pilot. Several people said they couldn't figure out what he was doing. They'd be feeling like they're low down to 4,500 above sea level. And Will is below them and going fast somewhere they didn't know where, but he finished ahead of them, and that was that. 1984, we had the standard class nationals here. That was the year that the Sky Sports Turbo 206 tow plane on the last contest day. We had 65 people at this contest. It's a very tight grouping at the top, and it's a thunderstorm day. And a third of the way through the launch, maybe the nose gear collapses on the Turbo 206 and leaves us with, I think, 4 tow planes to get the rest of the people into the air. And I'm not sure, but I'd need to look back. I don't think in 84, I don't think you were still having to wait until everyone was launched to be able to head out on task. And earlier in the contest, a lot of people had pulled back and were just sitting waiting for someone they knew to go, and then they'd pull out and go. So the guys at the back were really angry about that, about losing a tow plane on that. 1985, we did kind of a first for the SSA. We had the Open Class Nationals here, and we also had a Region 10 North contest that we ran the second half of the Open Class Nationals. Nothing like that had been done before, because up until early 1980, all the classes that existed could always draw enough people that there was no problem getting a sponsor for the contest because they knew they could make money on it. 83, 84, the number of contestants started dropping. The minimum number of contestants to have a valid nationals was 20. And we had 18 people signed up to fly the open class. So we got a couple of people to sign up to fly, and they took a tow on the first day and got a valid contest out of it. But to make a contest financially viable for an organizer, we asked SSA, can we run a regionals the second half of it? Well, the open class guys weren't real happy about that. But we said, you're still the number one priority. Yeah, you're going to have to watch out for them. They're the maneuverable little things, and you're the battleships. But all in all, it all worked out pretty good. Took a couple of years off. Then in 1989, we got signed up for the Open Class Nationals again. We had the Open Class, the Motor Glider, and a Region 10 for the second half of the contest. So we've got 10 days with Open and Motor Glider, and then 5 days with the last 5 days with Region 10 North contest. Again, we had a lot of interesting weather. One of the days of the regional, people were landing out at Pratt, but the wind was howling out of the west. And if you've flown at the Pratt airport, you know that it's a north-south airport. It's not an east-west airport. My dad's watching people landing to the north and ground loop off into the grass going west, and people landing south and ground looping off to the west. And he says, screw that, I'm in my 18, I got 90-degree flaps, I can touch down at almost 0 ground speed. So he comes in across the ramp, lands, touches down, and rolls about a plane length into the grass, perfectly under control. Heinz Weissenbuehler, flying an ASW-20C, sees my dad do that. Oh, I'm a U-2 pilot, I can do that. He comes in, misjudged a little bit. Dad said Heinz goes by him going into the grass. Heinz's eyes are about this big. He's still doing about 35, 40 miles an hour, and he's got the stick full forward, thinking that if it ground loops, I want the tail in the air so I won't snap the tail boom off. And of course, goes around 180 degrees, stops about 6 plane lengths in. Dad says the canopy flies up, belt's coming down. Heinz 1992, Region 10 North. We again got weathered out. Are you seeing a pattern here? Years that end in 2. 1992, I was competition director. The last day, because we had 2 days and you had to get 3. I was almost in tears for the guys that had come in for the contest, because it's solid overcast here, and you can see the sun is shining brightly on the ground, probably at Mills Field, maybe.
Oh my.
And there's Q starting to pop out there. And we hadn't thought of the idea of tow everyone up there, make them do a best LRD, glide back in here, start, get back out there and go do a task. So we didn't get a contest in 92. 95, after 92, I said, never again am I going to be a competition director. 95, well, never for Region 10 North of 95. We barely got a contest in. On the last day, I decided that I was going to, after we got them launched, task opened, I got my Zuni and took a tow. I think the task was Kingman, Arlington and back. It was pretty crappy weather. And I almost landed out 5 miles this side of Arlington. I got up from there, call 5 miles out, switching to 3 and cross your fingers. There were a lot of final glides that came in with not a whole lot of energy left at the end of that contest. 2000, we had Region 10 North contest. We lost the first day to rain showers in the morning, overcast, and very, very late start. The remaining 4 days, I think I was competition director again, and I think we had excellent weather for that. My goal as a competition director is always to do my best to make everything I can to have each day be a evaluation due to too many people landing out. And all 4 days in all the classes were 1,000-point days. So I felt really good about that. 2002, Region 10 North, again weathered out. That was the year that we had a front come in 1 week before the contest. It came in guns a-blazing. It's just awesome. Pictures of it, you can see it. It's rolling like this and churning and boiling behind it. And the front came in and stopped and sat for 2 solid weeks.
Oh, wow.
One of the days during the contest, Dennis Brown was flying the tow plane for doing the sounding with me in the morning. All operations. And someone said, well, I want to go fly. And it's like, we're not towing you. They said, why? I said, well, we measured the wind at 1500 AGL. We flew 120 mile an hour in the 182. It took us 2 minutes to fly 1 mile going southbound into the wind and 20 seconds to fly feet above ground. I am not letting anybody launch into this. I think, I can't remember, it was 92. We always talk about, one of the things to talk about is trigger temperature and the spread between trigger temperature and forecast high. 95, we've been having absolutely crap weather. And I said, I've got good news and bad news for everyone today. Okay, well, what's the good news? Well, you know how we've been working with 2 or 3 degrees between trigger and forecast high all week up to now? Yeah. Well, the good news is today we have an 8-degree spread between trigger. The bad news is the forecast high is 95 and even the field fires weren't even punching through the inversion at 800 feet. So my internet connection is unstable. 2004, KSA and Sunflower. Things began to change a little bit around here. Sunflower hosts Good Sam's event. How many of you are familiar with the Good Sam's Club? Good Samaritans Club. So in 2003, they had their annual meeting at the fairgrounds in Hutchinson. And it rained and rained. RVs stuck in mud up to the frames, pulling them out with having to bring in the big rotator trucks and giant 20,000 pound cables and try and pull these things out. And they just tore up the fairground parking lots, destroyed a lot of stuff. They were trying to get things out. And Bill went and talked to them and said, why don't you come to Sunflower? I've got acres and acres of pavement that you can park on. So they agreed, and he came out here one Saturday morning when I was out here to get a flight review. And he tells us, okay, 2 weekends in June, he gives us the dates. He said, you guys have to be out of here. If you want to fly, you have to be out of here. Bringing the Good Sam's Club in. They're going to cover the place with RVs. And I'm going to give KSA the money that they're paying me to rent the place. Wow. Okay. And then, but wait, there's money to be used towards buying a fiberglass two-place sailplane. KSA's constitution at the time said KSA can own anything needed to support glider operations except gliders. And the reason for that is KSA was formed back in the early 1960s to be a group that kind of was, they could come here and fly if they wanted and all that. So we could own an airport, we could own a tow plane, we can own ropes, winches, whatever, but we're not supposed to own gliders because that's what the other clubs are supposed to do. If a club loses a tow plane, we can invite them to come fly with us, or we can go fly with them for a weekend and they can keep flying. So, and then he also said, oh, and I'm going to turn over operation of Sunflower to Kansas Soaring Association. What does that entail? Well, that entails you guys collect the rent from the hangar. You guys get the rent from the farmland. You get this. And it's like, okay, are we going to be paying the electric bill, paying the water bill, paying property taxes? And he said, nope, I'll handle that. Wow. So KSA glider ownership, because he said, I'm giving you, was about, I think it was $8,000 to $10,000 that they paid to rent the place for the weekend time. So we got $10,000, and then he took all the checks that he had gotten for hangar rent and said, here, they're yours. So we ended up paying about maybe $8,000 or $9,000 out of KSA's pocket to buy the Grove that we have now. So it was kind of hard not to change the rule, change the Constitution. When you're given a big gift, you find ways to work with the gift. So we took over, KSA took over operation of Sunflower. I was the one that got tasked with making the deal. I made the deal. I went and got the Grove, brought it back up here. First weekend that it's up here, I yelling, where's my Grove? Where's my Grove? So the Good Sam's came out. All those white spots are Class A and Class B recreational. Runway, got our runway, we've got the ramp completely filled up. They didn't have RVs here because those are still trucks filled with fireworks that had to be kept 200 feet away from anything adjacent.
Trucks filled.
For a while, Bill was worked with a company in the
5 or 10 miles north of Hutchinson on Plum Street behind them. They're still around.
Yeah.
They're just,
Oh,
they're up there now. They're not.
Yeah. Yeah. But the most interesting thing was the first week after the fireworks trucks were brought in, they had a fire at one of the trucks. They said, well, it was a grass fire and it caught this truck. Point for the fire was here, the truck was here, and the flame pattern went that way. So some guys were playing with fireworks on the end of the truck. They set the grass on fire, and the grass burned into the truck, and the rest was history. And this picture was actually taken by Charles Pate flying, I believe he was flying a diesel powered 172 that was under test at Cessna at the time.
I remember him telling me that for a while, he was asked with fly this 172, and he had to fly it a couple hundred hours.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a job where
Yeah.
you're told you need to fly this airplane for a couple hundred hours, they didn't really care what you're at.
And there's another shot of, you can see on this, on the right-hand side of the ramp where that taxiway kind of goes back and forth. It used to be a straight taxiway, but when Bill had the alligator pits dug or cleared out, opened up, and he had the northeast end of the northeast southwest runway broken out, he also had them break up that taxiway to the shape of the race car track that was laid out in there.
Oh, okay. That's right.
So they had you were going up and to the right from the bottom of the picture, you make the left-hand turn, then you've got the S's, and then when you get to the ramp, you've got a hard right, and then where the RVs are, you had a hard left to go down the front straight on the racetrack. About 2010, Bill Seed had Hangar 1 built. 2011, the 175 that we have, Bill bought it from to get the Soaring Society of America to host World Soaring Championships here. Unbeknownst to him, Uvalde had already put in a bid for the 2012 World Championships. The relationship between Bill and SSA fell apart. KSA hadn't done what Bill wanted us to do, but hadn't come out and told us we needed to do, which was run contests and run contests and run contests. Not going to be the future owner of Sunflower Aerodrome. So KSA president and about a dozen other people got together and formed the Sunflower Soaring Foundation and talked set up of this will be a glider port forever, which was Bill's dream. We are here to train people. We are here as a public charity. And the organization was formed. Bill was aware of it. Transferred operational responsibility from Kansas Soaring Association to the Sunflower Soaring Foundation. Our Region 10 low performance contest after 2011 and 2012, where 2011 we had a brain bake June, but the inversion finally broke at the end of June and soaring became absolutely phenomenal for July and the first half of August. And then 2012, where we had our fine week of soaring, the week of July 4th in Cowbell, Tony said, we got to get people in here for a contest in 2013. This is the time. Just look at what the last 2 years have done. Well, got a contest, barely. It got hot and contest.
It's like 2 finishers all week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the 2002 contest, we never opened a task. 2018, a Region 10 contest. 2019, this facility came to be, Club Class Nationals. 2020, ever, I believe. We did 900 and some tows with KSA in 2020. Even with contests after that, we don't get to that number. Did a lot of training. And it was a great escape. 2021, the 126 Nationals and Region 10 low performance. 2022, later that year, Pete Alexander asked me, so Steve, is it always that craptastic at Sunflower? I said, no, sometimes it's worse. I said, that was The weather was just terrible. 2025, we had a regionals. We had weather that was uncooperative, unpredictable, but soarable. Not great, but soarable. And we got the 2026 Club Class Nationals coming up this year. So we're doing our best to do what Bill wanted done with the airport. We're flying as much as we can. We're hosting contests. We're bringing people in from outside. We're trying to get things accomplished. Main thing we need to do, just come out and fly. That was not too terribly long after Dave Wilkes had gotten his first flight in his DM. His airspeed indicator was a max speed flown on this flight recording device. The return spring on the needle had broken or come off. So whatever was the highest speed he had flown to, that's where the needle was. So he's come a long way since then. He's had a lot of fun with the plane. And that's all I've got for a brief run, a not so brief run through, because I see people in the back going, oh,
That was great.
there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been covered. I was trying to find pictures like from some of our outings. One of my favorites was a picture that I couldn't find. It was of the on a grass airport.
We hosted WISPA in 2024 and had a lovely,
Yeah.
just weather-wise.
That was the best story we could find, yeah.
It may not have been the strongest, but it was the most consistent.
Yeah.
Consistent and pliable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Every day until 7:30 or
Yeah,
later.
yeah, it was.
It was just
Yeah.
phenomenal. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have that.
Awful, and
Yeah.
had a really good.
And then I think it was 22 where we had a week of really good stuff. I did I did back-to-back days of 500K triangles in the Zuni. The second of those 2 days, Gary Osaba flew his JS1 from Moriarty to here.
Wow.
Wow. It's 495 miles, I think.
What year was that, Steve?
I think it was 22. From Zapata up to near Amarillo. Yeah.
8.5 hours.
Yeah. His wife said, never again.
Just like flowers.
Yeah.
So where did Bill Seed's buddy crash that F4 out?
Wasn't an F4, it was an A37.
Was it?
Yeah. Right out here.
Is that right? Doing a buzz job?
For sinus infections, Jim LaSwear is the individual that the way Soaring has changed would probably have Jim rolling over in his grave. He absolutely hated handicaps. He said, race what you brung. If you can't bring the best, you're not going to have a chance, not going to have as good a chance. But he was having nothing major. Taking medications for sinus infection. I think Bill was out here. Jim came by. And then just slow rolls straight down. Jim was my dad's mentor in soaring. He was the one that put in, I think he put it in the variometer years ago, said sex is overrating. He coined phrases like up your aspect ratio. He was the one that told my dad, don't build a Cherokee. It doesn't have enough performance. You're going to get bored. And my dad said, but I just want to be able to get up and go flying. After harping on him quite a while, my dad finally agreed to with some help, design a new wing for it. And he made a wing that had a 50-foot. He kind of referred to the glider like Dick Johnson referred to the RJ5. referred to it as an anvil resting on an eggshell. The fuselage for the Cherokee is a lightweight model airplane style construction, longerons, uprights, some lattice work. And the entire Cherokee empty is about what? The wing for the Nebula weighs 350 pounds. So he kind of jokingly called it an anvil resting on an eggshell.
Yeah, the Cherokee was meant to be built by anyone who could build a
Model
a
airplane.
canoe, or something just.
If you built
really basic.
if you built model airplane,
Not a lot of complex furniture.
Yeah. Anybody got any questions, comments, additional stories they'd like to share?
Was a lot of information, okay?
Yeah.
Awesome, that was.
Magazine online, pulling up articles, screen grabbing, going through slides, having them projected on the wall, standing off in archive, the pictures being passed around. I can't find the ones that I really wanted. There were a couple of overhead shots of Sunflower that showed the tire marks from the corners so you could see how the racing track was laid out. But crashed my 10-speed bike into a motorhome party on the ramp or on the runway in the middle of the night. I had gone out and was riding backwards around the racetrack, and I'm going down the runway, 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing. I'm head down, just cranking away. And all of a sudden I see lights flash by about 2 feet off to my side. And they had parked several RVs, and the lights from the RVs were shining into there, and they're all out there drinking. And I went screaming by and almost hit them. I got the nickname Boom Boom. Yeah. Milk jugs, take an acetylene torch, get a good hot flame going, and then they'd hit the torch on a table to knock the fire out. But they've got the perfect mix of oxygen and acetylene for burning. Put the thing into the open mouth of a milk jug, wait a while. That's probably full. The handle of the milk jug, go out on the ramp, set it down, then light the end of the rag on fire and run away. The rag burns back, it melts through the plastic milk jug, and there's a gigantic oxygen acetylene explosion out there on the ramp. Gigantic fireball. Well, they decided they wanted to step their game up a little bit, and they got a trash bag. They're gonna fill a trash bag with this. They get it set up. They're in the garage over there where Bill Seed's Maserati was. That's a whole other story. But they're in there. They got the flame right. They knocked it out. They're filling the trash bag, sitting there quite a. And they're thinking, is it still flowing? They're listening. They can't hear anything. Trying to figure out, well, what's it doing? Well, let's ruffle it a little bit. Separates and static electricity, a spark, and a gigantic explosion and fireball, and the windows blown out of the garage doors, and everyone lost their eyebrows, and eardrums were ruptured, and trips to the emergency room. They didn't do any more acetylene bombs after that.
Or Malin, and then I heard that story.
Yeah.
It's not at all surprised, if you ever knew Malin.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the other mail-in stories that I love. Puts a big old wad in, and he's standing there by the score sheet or by the chalkboard to the right. Spits over here, and someone says, "Man, that's disgusting. How can you do that? What are you doing? Spitting tobacco around here? Oh God!" On and on and on. Mail goes, "Oh." Malin turns and walks off. Find out later he just had raisins in the chewing tobacco bag. So he was spitting raisin juice out on the ground. And he just swallowed a bunch of raisins.
I'm gonna go, but all I got to say is I'm sure Bill Seed is smiling down upon us.
I hope so. See you, Chuck.
Yeah, I know Jim Foreman used to go out here. Isn't it where he flew the tow plane right through the. You'd have to know how to appreciate the story, but he. Foreman, is that you that just flew the tow plane through the start gate? And he said, can you see my numbers? And he said, no.
Jim was here for the contest in '79, was crewing for AJ Smith. And Jim got in trouble with AJ one day because Jim washed the bugs off the windshield of the Firebird. AJ was running a test with a couple of different solutions to put on the windshield to see which one collected fewer bugs. Because 1979, we had an awful lot of bugs in the contest here, and the performance drops off rapidly when you got bugs on the wings. He was up flying and he decided gliders pulled off and sitting at the side of the runway waiting for their sign that someone says it's time to go so that we can go because, you know, we Fiber Hornet on loan from Graham Thompson. He comes in, lines up all the gliders. People are yelling and screaming and waving their arms because he's got the gear up. We're figuring he's just about to land gear up on the runway in front of rolls to a stop somewhere maybe halfway between the intersection and cross taxiway. My dad was at the start window, which was further down the run. I just need to wash the bugs off my wings, then I'll be ready to go. Can I get a tow from here, or do I have to pull back down there? None of them are on the runway in position ready to go. He said, I'll be ready in 2 minutes. Dad said, okay, I'll drive down there. I'll send a tow plane down and you'll launch from here. Dad drive. Hey, why is he getting to go? Why aren't we towing? You're sitting at the side of the runway. He told me he's ready to go. Are you ready to go? And all of a sudden, all 40 or so gliders come rushing out onto the runway. AJ gets the wings wiped clean of all the bugs. Things, just as many bugs on him as there were when he landed the first time. He said all he could do is just laugh about it. Okay, we're all going to be this way. And recording of this.
And